Nigeria needs to embark on a pragmatic approach to achieve net zero emissions by year 2060 as part of the worldwide measures and efforts on energy transition to combat climate change and its attendant effects. This was the submission of Professor Jamiu Adetayo of the Department of Chemical Engineering, University of Ilorin, while speaking in an interview with MITV News in Lagos. Our correspondent, Fatou Kikule, compiles details in this report as presented from our studios.
Over the years, climate change is a menace in view of its damaging effects to the environment, creating socio-economic imbalance worldwide. The phenomenon is so real that it has become not only an environmental issue, but a health problem as failure to take adequate care of the environment leads to health challenges. Due to the damaging effects of climate change, world leaders, environmental scientists, and other stakeholders agreed on international commitments like the Paris Agreement, Conference of Parties COP2, of which Nigeria is a signatory, while the country embarks on clean energy to substantially reduce carbon emission in the atmosphere.
If all these plans are actually executed to later, we can actually achieve net zero emission by 2060. But at present, I still see it as being, it seems like we are just being over ambitious about it. If all hands are not on deck to actually tackle this menace. So it's possible. However, there should be concerted effort from the academia, from the political class, and from people, especially the industrialists, to combat this.
If you look at the issues of environmental practices, most times people kind of look at it like something that is just for them, for just the engineering professionals. But I'm here standing before you to say it is our collective responsibility. We all belong to an environment, and in fact, we may not and we cannot underestimate how well, how strongly we get influenced by the environment. And on that basis, I'm using this opportunity to call on each and every one of us, looking at Lagos State, having population of over 20 million, of course, the more the numbers, the more the need for every one of us to pay attention.
Professor Adetayo said that climate change is beyond policies in combating the phenomenon, but it involves science, as environmental issues in a part of the world are easily transferred to other parts of the world, pointing out that Nigeria, like other nations, need to maintain 1.5% in temperature to achieve less temperature in the midst of the intense heat condition in line with international agreements.
The intensity of CO2, the emission as it increases, it also increases the global temperature. They are directly correlated. So what the Paris Club and what other agencies are looking at, that we should try to maintain that 1.5% increase in temperature. That we can actually have a lower temperature if we reduce CO2 emission, and it's achievable.
Blessed with abundant renewable energy resources such as solar, wind, hydro, and biomass, we must accelerate our shift from fossil fuel dependency to a green economy that prioritizes sustainability, environmental protection, and economic resilience. Lagos State, as Nigeria economic hub, stands at the forefront of this transition. However, it also faces enormous challenges: urban pollution, energy deficit, rising greenhouse gas emissions, and the growing demand for sustainable infrastructure. These challenges present opportunity for environmental engineers to lead in deploying climate-smart clean energy technologies.
The flooding effect, the high temperature, everyone is feeling so much heat, and there's a lot of, through the flooding, there's a lot of displacements of property, there's a lot of loss of lives, economic activities cannot go on, and all of these effects, amounts into millions of dollars. The Boston Consulting Group has done an estimate of not doing anything, and it runs into millions of dollars. So we need to inject a lot of funds into climate-friendly and resilient infrastructure.
The chemical engineer also linked the insecurity issues in parts of the country, like the farmers-herdsmen clashes, to climate change, which prompts herdsmen to source for grazing lands elsewhere due to loss of arable land in the northern part of the country.
We have this desertification. The grasses cattle are grazing. They are gradually disappearing. As they disappear, that means they have to move to other places. When they move to other places, that means there will be a population in some other places as well. So movement of people from the climate impacted area to places where they are less climate impacted will actually lead to insecurity, because you have more people, you have a lot of insecurity issues in the new areas.
For now, Nigerians need to put in place political will and intensify approach to international drafts against climate change, with efforts on the development of energy transition plan to ensure that it achieves the net zero emission by year 2060.